Hello and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Wildcard 4 draft. Now personally I have activated the wildcards. This is going to be my current team, but it's also going to act as a wildcard guide as well, because I'm going to take you through every reason through each of my decisions, and we're going to take a look at all the stats from game week 1, 2, 3 as well. So we're going to have defcons for each position, attacking stats from there as well. We're also going to have upcoming clean sheet odds and goal odds, basically everything that you are going to need for the upcoming game weeks if you are going to be hitting the wild card. Now personally I've just had a little bit, I'm not going to show my squad right now, but personally I'm a little bit tired of it, and that is why I'm going to be using the wild card this week. And there has been quite a few injuries and of course a lot of new transfers, but I'm going to be hitting I already have pressed the wildcard button, and that is what I'm going to be doing this week. But the plan is also to be using the free hit in game week 6. Now that is something that I will talk a little bit about as we get into the video. This video specifically isn't going to be on, using the free hit in game week 6. I will, show alternative options that are potentially available, which you can of course look at if you don't want to use the free hit in 6. But personally I think if you are going to be wildcarding this week, the free hit in game week 6 does look like a very good option. Now what we are going to start off with is the fixtures for game week 4 to 9, and we're looking at the best fixtures available. Now this is according to Fantasy Football Hub's best, the fixture analyzer, and we are using the classic FPL fixture ticker as well. So Wolves are the team from game week 4 to 9 that do have the best fixtures. Now again, this is, analysing all of the next 6 game weeks, so a lot of Wolves, a lot of the points that Wolves are going to get are going to come from game week 8 and 9, having Sunderland and Burnley. So really if you want to look short term, Wolves don't have the best fixtures. Game week 4 is looking pretty difficult, and obviously game week 6 and 7 aren't looking too great. You could probably say the same with Leeds, however no red fixtures in there for Leeds, and obviously you can get a lot of your cheaper options from Leeds. Leeds defenders at 4 million are definitely a pick. Rodon's a really good one. Goodmanson as well was a pretty popular one in game week 1. He was someone who does have he's got like a slight injury alert beside him, so I'm not sure on that one, but Rodon's looking really good if you want to go for the best player from Leeds for ball recoveries and defence at 4 million. Bournemouth, of course, as well in there. Really nice fixtures, 2 home fixtures in the next 2. And again, if you are on the free hit in game week 6 strategy, doesn't work great for Bournemouth considering they have Leeds in there, but you are getting 3 home fixtures as well from Bournemouth, and 4 home fixtures in the next 5, really only excluding that game week 8 fixture against Crystal Palace. Aston Villa are in there as well with the 4th best fixtures, and it's really good short term fixtures for Aston Villa. Again, if you're using the free hit in game week 6, you've got Burnley and Sunderland on either side of that. Now I think Aston Villa is going to be a big reason why a lot of people are hitting that wild card, because they were a good team in pre-season and looked very solid. However, haven't really looked good at all in the opening 3 game weeks. Personally, I think I do have Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins in my team. We will take a look at some of the stats as we get on into this video, but I definitely think it is worth potentially looking to hold on to them, because it is still really, really nice fixtures, and at the end of the day it has only been 3 game weeks. Villa did make a couple of deadline date signings as well, which could potentially bolster that attack as well. So a team we will look into as we get into the video. Newcastle as well with some really nice fixtures, very ideal for free hitting in game week 6, so that way you would avoid that Arsenal fixture, but you're getting Wolves at home, Bournemouth away and Nottingham Forest at home, as well as Brighton and Fulham in there, so you're avoiding the only red fixture that Newcastle could potentially have. Spurs still with very nice fixtures, had a nice opening 3 and do look pretty decent. West Ham away, Wolves at home, Leeds away, still some really nice games in there for those guys, the likes of Pedro Porro, Kudus, maybe new signings, Kolo Muani and Xavi Simons could be some people on the radar as well, depending on how much you want to play a little bit risky. Obviously don't have any underlying stats already for those guys, and we don't really know how they are going to fit into the system, but 2 very, very solid players nonetheless. And then Arsenal come in there as well, with Nottingham Forest at home in game week 4. A tough fixture in game week 5 against Manchester City. Again, another tough fixture against Newcastle away in game week 6, and then into a really nice run from game week 7 onwards, which is going to be a very popular wildcard window for a lot of people, to move into Arsenal players in game week 7. What you can take into that consideration though is, if you're free hitting in game week 6, you're going to get 3 home games out of Arsenal, with Nottingham Forest, Manchester City and West Ham in the next 3, and that way you are geared up and don't have to worry about making transfers to bring any of those guys in game week 7. You would already own them, so that is a potential that you could go for. However, the fixtures are still pretty difficult, but it is definitely something that should be considered when wildcarding this week. Now, next thing we'll look at is clean sheet odds over the next 6 game weeks, and as you would imagine, this is thanks to 11ify. It is a lot of your big teams in the, with the higher chances of clean sheets, so no real surprises there. Arsenal up there with 2.5, Man City with 2.10, and Liverpool in there with 2.04 as well. Now, something to keep in mind again for any of us on a free hit 6 strategy, which I'm going to continuously talk about because I do think it is the best option for a wildcard in game week 4. Liverpool are looking really, really nice for that. You're going to have a 47% chance in game week 4 and a 45% chance of a clean sheet in game week 5 as well, before free hitting in game week 6. And game week 7 is likely where you would want to be using some transfers anyway, and you could maybe get 1 or 2 of those guys out by that time. But really, really nice fixtures. I think definitely the best 2 defensive fixtures for Liverpool players in game week 4 and 5, which is very apparent. Second for clean sheet odds in game week 4 and first for clean sheet odds in game week 5. Now, obviously, wildcarding, I'm really looking at goalkeepers for this right now, and Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool aren't really teams that I'm considering for a goalkeeper, because 5.5 million for me is just a little bit expensive. So after that, you're looking at Chelsea and Newcastle. Now, that's the 2 goalkeepers that I'm really got on my short list for the wildcard this week. We have Nick Pope and we have Sanchez as well. Now, Sanchez has been my goalkeeper for the first 3 game weeks, and I believe Chelsea have kept 2 clean sheets. Now, if you want to purely look at clean sheet odds for this week and the following weeks, Newcastle are probably looking like one of the better teams to go for, one of the better options for goalkeepers. They're ahead of Chelsea in game week 4 with 40 to 28%. Just about the same, a little bit less than Chelsea in game week 5 with 23% to 26%. Obviously, free hitting, if you were going to use that in game week 6, and then game week 7, almost double the clean sheet chances of Chelsea as well. So short term, it looks really, really nice. Going into game week 8 and 9, Chelsea start to look a lot better. But if you want to look short term, if you're happy making a goalkeeper transfer, Nick Pope could be a really good short term option. And I think if you weren't using the free hit, you maybe just stick with Sanchez. Personally, I want to try to keep a goalkeeper, season long. We will take a look at defences in just a little second. Short term wise though, just clean sheet odds, Newcastle look a little bit better than Chelsea. So I definitely would keep an eye on Nick Pope, who I haven't really seen in a lot of wildcards so far. But we can move into the goalkeeper stats, which is where we can look at some of the defences, and this further emphasises why I think Newcastle is one of the better teams to kind of look out for, at least Nick Pope and himself. Now, if you look at the expected goals conceded, Newcastle are the best defence so far in the first 3 game weeks, and you've got to consider that they've also played against Liverpool in that time as well. It's not really been great fixtures. I think they had Aston Villa as well in game week 1, so the fixtures haven't been fantastic for Newcastle, and they have only conceded 1.5 expected goals. Now, the reason I've got goalkeeper stats on here, again, when picking a goalkeeper, you want to try and obviously go for clean sheets, but you also want to try and pick up some saves as well. Now, I think the best stat for that is going to be shots conceded from outside the box, because a goalkeeper is going to be more likely to save it if it is from outside the box as opposed to inside the box. So I've kind of added that as a stat. It's not the be all and end all, and obviously on the 3 game weeks in, there isn't going to be a huge gap between a lot of the goalkeepers, but you're looking at Leeds, you're looking at Man United, 2 teams teams in there who have conceded the most shots from outside the box, but are still, you know, within the top 10 defences. I don't really think there's, you know, a huge enough gap. You know, Newcastle have conceded 13, Chelsea have conceded 13, as opposed to Leeds and Man United at 16, which isn't huge at the end of the day. But if you're looking for a 4.5 mil goalkeeper, obviously only 3 weeks in, we can't really, you know, take these stats for concrete. I don't really expect Sunderland to be the 4th best defence throughout the entire season, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bournemouth were up there by the end of the season. So, you know, Petrovic is still looking like a really nice option, and we have already seen the fixtures which did have Bournemouth as having some of the best fixtures available. So if you do want a 4.5 million goalkeeper, I think, you know, the Bournemouth goalkeeper in Petrovic is a really nice option. Personally, however, I am going to be going for Nick Pope. At least he is in my current draft. I think I'm still, you know, it is still a toss-up between Nick Pope and Robert Sanchez. Right now I'm going for Nick Pope because I do like the look of the Newcastle defence, and obviously a couple of seasons ago they were very well known for having the best defence in the league, which has, over the past 2 seasons or so, you know, kind of dwindled, not really been as good. This season they look pretty solid again. They've got all their players available, and I think there's a decent chance that Newcastle do very well defensively this season, with of course great fixtures coming up. And I'm going to put a little spoiler in there. I don't have any more Newcastle players in this team, so I feel like it's good to have some cover in Nick Pope, and I think he'll be a really nice option. Hopefully that I can keep at least until my second wild card, so, you know, 15 game weeks down the line, where we potentially would use that. We'll see how he gets on, but right now it is, you know, a toss up between Sanchez and Pope. I think you really can go for, you know, whoever. I do think they are the best 2 options available. Nick Pope is the one I do have in my team currently. I've also got Dubravka as well, because I don't want to spend money on a backup goalkeeper, and he is the only 4 million starting goalkeeper as well, with a potential bench boost 8 in mind as well, where Burnley do play against Leeds at home. He is obviously the best option there, with a potential bench boost on the cards. Now, we've already seen the goalkeepers, we've already seen the clean sheet odds. Now we have to look at defenders, and what we're going to take a look at for this is attacking stats and defensive contributions. We'll firstly look at attacking stats and see who the most attacking defenders have been over the first 3 game weeks, and we are starting with a very surprising pick in Ricardo Calafiori, who has the most shots and the highest expected goal involvement from the first 3 game weeks as well. Now, the problem with Arsenal again is they do have pretty difficult short-term fixtures, but of course they do have 3 home games, which we have spoke about, if you are going to free hit in 6, that is. So I don't mind picking an Arsenal player. I don't really think it's terrible, but he is looking like a really nice option. I think from game week 7 onwards, if he is still, you know, top 3 in both these charts, he definitely could be a very, very nice option. You're also seeing Urian Timber in there as well, 4th for shots with 4 shots in the first 3 games, and 2nd for expected goal involvements as well. Now again, you do have to take these stats with a pinch of salt. We obviously did, we are wildcarding early at the end of the day. We don't have concrete stats to really look at, but it does give us a decent idea of who could be good going forwards. Obviously, we've got some, you know, classics in there. Daniel Munoz in at 3rd for expected goal involvement. I think he was 2nd, only behind Trent Alexander-Arnold last year for expected goal involvement. And of course, Palace are coming into a fantastic run of fixtures. So I think Daniel Munoz is probably going to be the first name on a lot of wildcard team sheets. Someone in there as well who is a little bit surprising is Jakeem Anderson with 0.9 expected goal involvements. Now, he is someone that is really nice for DEFCON as well. He had some very nice numbers last year, and this year is looking pretty decent for it as well. Leeds at home for Fulham as well in game week 4. I think if I was free hitting, he would definitely be in my team, but he is someone that I definitely would be considering for the upcoming game weeks. Also get some other ones in there. Chalobah sitting at 2nd for shots and 5th for expected goal involvement if you are potentially looking for a cheaper Chelsea defender that isn't Cucurella. Lacroix in there, another one really nice for DEFCON, and of course up there for expected goal involvements as well. Again, don't know how long these players are going to be here for. You can see how close all the numbers are. You know, game week 4, Lacroix could find himself, you know, in the bottom 20, or at least outside of the top 20, if he gets no shots, that kind of thing. So it's just, you know, something to look at, that does obviously help building a wild card, but again, the stats are only 3 game weeks long. I think if we had maybe double that and we had 6 game weeks worth of knowledge, we could really start to look at some, you know, in-depth stats as to who the best players to pick were. But at least we have, you know, a decent idea of who could be good and who could be not. Looking at the DEFCONs, it is Van Dijk at the top, which I am quite surprised about. I think he only averaged just over 8 before... last season. He has been fantastic for DEFCONs, averaging 14.67 per 90. Obviously 10 is needed for the 2 points. He has picked it up in 2 out of his 3 games so far, which is fantastic. And again, Liverpool do have Burnley and Everton in the next 2 matches, which does really make him a very nice pick for a wildcard team if you are looking for a 6 million defender. Senesi as well from Bournemouth is probably going to be your best option as a Bournemouth defender. Obviously, if you're picking Petrovic in goals, maybe not. The double up is going to be your best pick, but I think Senesi is definitely a really nice one to go for. You know, solid numbers last year as well, and he is sitting at second, averaging 14 in the first 3 matches for him. James Tarkowski in there as well, of course, and Lacroix as well, and I think that Palace double up is going to be a really good option for a lot of people, with again really good fixtures over the next few, high XGI and you know, high DEFCONs as well. So Lacroix and Munoz looking like really good options. And you are going to see Chris Richards down there in 10th for total CBIT. He has picked up 29 in total in his first 3 games, which does put him just below the average 10 threshold, but he has picked it up in 1 of the 3 games so far. He is obviously cheaper than Lacroix. I do think Lacroix is a little bit of a better option. We did touch on both of them pre-season. Richards did look like a very good value option, but Lacroix did just look a little bit better, and that was really for every stat, whether it was expected goal involvements and defensive contributions as well. So Richards is still a really nice option if you really need that 0.5, but personally I would be picking Lacroix out of those guys. Someone else I did want to touch on as well is Ekdal for Burnley. He is looking like probably the best Burnley defender you can go for. Obviously Esteve is the guy that in most people's teams right now, but Ekdal over the first 3 games for Burnley, also 4 million, has picked up DEFCONs in 2 games and is averaging 10.61 as well. So if you are looking for a 4 million Burnley defender to potentially replace Esteve, I would probably be looking at Ekdal instead. So with all that being said, these are the 5 defenders that I'm looking at for my team, and that's going to be Van Dijk, Munoz, Lacroix, Senesi, and then I'm throwing in Joe Rodon in at the bench as well. Now, I think with everyone in the starting 11, we have kind of spoke about in some way the double Palace defence looking really nice over the next 2, and then we've got the 2 top players for defensive contributions in Van Dijk and Senesi as well. Bournemouth obviously with really nice fixtures over the next 6, and I would expect Senesi to continue to get good DEFCONs, and I think he also got an attack and return in the first 3 games as well, so a really nice option at 4.5 million, or well 4.6 million now, and then of course Van Dijk in at 6 million is looking fantastic. I think Liverpool will keep some clean sheets over the next couple of games. He could be one to potentially take out in future, you know, but I'm happy to kind of bank transfers, and I think this season I'm more willing to rotate between my 6 million defenders. I think 8 Nuri could be really nice in a few weeks. Cucurella of course was really nice for me in the first 3 game weeks as well. But I think Van Dijk over the next couple is going to be the best 6 million defender available. Then I've got Joe Rodon in at defence as well. Now, this is kind of taken into consideration the bench boost in game week 8. Now, we saw Leeds with the second best fixtures available, and in game week 8, obviously they will be playing against Burnley away from home, where Leeds could potentially keep a clean sheet. And of course, as I did mention at the start of the video as well, Rodon is the best pick for defensive contributions for Leeds. I don't think he's fantastic, but if you do want to pick one, he is going to be the best option. Could potentially move that to Goodmanson depending on how that injury news comes along. I don't know how severe that is, but I definitely will be looking at a Leeds defender instead of a Burnley defender, because they've got a pretty difficult fixture in game week 8. Moving on to midfielders then, and we are going to start off with attacking stats, and the one that really stands out to me is Bruno Fernandes with a high 2.5 expected goal involvement in his first 3 games, and he's also taken 8 shots as well. Now the problem you have to consider here is that Bruno has also had 2 penalties in that time. Now I think a penalty equates to 0.75 xg, so you could, you know, put him a lot lower in the list if you took the penalties away. But personally, when I'm looking at expected goal involvement, I feel like you do have to include penalties because you pick penalty takers for a reason. And you know, he just has managed to, you know, accumulate 2 penalties in his first 3 matches, which does put him up there. Obviously we've got Enzo Fernandez in there as well, who does have a penalty under his belt in there as well. So there are things that you do have to consider. You know, Enzo's not going to have penalties forever. Palmer will be back and taking them as normal, so those stats could be a little bit more inflated, but I definitely think it is worth considering. Obviously them being penalty takers, which obviously is a huge part of FPL. But if you want to look at shots, Semenyo as well in at 10th, and at first with 10, and that is a trend that we also saw last year. Semenyo just seems to take so many shots on, which is obviously fantastic from an FPL perspective, because that's, you know, what you want from your midfielders. But he's also done really well in the opening 3 game weeks. The only problem with him is he obviously doesn't take the penalties. Kluivert is now back and will probably be back on penalties for Bournemouth. Not that Semenyo would have been there, you know, without him anyway. That probably would have been Evan Elson, but even then Semenyo still looking like a fantastic pick. He is one of the cheaper, you know, midfielders, a mid-priced midfielder as well, and he's definitely someone that looks fantastic with 2 expected goal involvements as well, and obviously without penalties. That is just, you know, some really good stats to look at. And Bournemouth, of course, have a fantastic run. So Semenyo is someone that I think is going to be pretty locked in to my team, wildcard wise anyway. He does look, you know, fantastic. Another one in there as well is the Man United trio of Mbeumo, Fernandes and Cunha, all taking 8 shots so far. So Man United seem to be getting forward, taking a lot of shots. I don't think there's enough, you know, evidence to show that, you know, they're going to be fantastic over the next couple, or who the best option is going to be between those 3. I think that is one that we do have to, you know, wait another few game weeks for that. And I think they do play Manchester City in game week 4 as well, and they don't have the best run of fixtures. So for Man United players, I mean, if you're not going to be picking Bruno Fernandes, I think the likes of Mbeumo and Cunha obviously picked up an injury, but the likes of Mbeumo, I definitely would be waiting another while to see how he's going to get on in that Man United system. Over on the XGI list as well, you've got the likes of Ismail Assar. Would have been a fantastic pick for a game week 4 wildcard. It is just unfortunate that he did pick up an injury and he is going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks, so it does rule him out as a pick on a game week 4 wildcard, which does suck because he was only 6.5 million, and you know, with the run of fixtures that Crystal Palace do have, it is kind of disappointing. And again, his injury was pretty much the reason that I did wildcard. I brought him in game week 3 hoping to get in early on Palace. He obviously scored, which was nice, so I did get some points in return, but he is injured for the next couple of games, so he's really not an option and someone that I would have had to transfer out, so the wildcard just made sense for me. But it is a little bit unfortunate, but he definitely would have been a really nice pick. But it just means that we can now go for the double Palace defence that we do have in Munoz and Lacroix, and don't really have to worry too much about the attack. In terms of defensive contributions, we of course have Moises Caicedo in at number 1, who has picked up defensive contributions in 2 of his 3 matches. The same as Bruno Fernandes as well. Caicedo is basically, you know, the DEFCON monster. He's the guy that we expected to be at number 1, but Bruno Fernandes is right up there as well and basically matching his numbers as well, only 1 less. Of course, recoveries do count for midfielders as well, and they need to achieve 12 to hit that threshold for the 2 points. We're also seeing a lot of not so great picks in the likes of Tyler Adams, James Garner. Szoboszlai is up there as well, who's picked up DEFCONs in 1 game but has a nice average of 11.33, which is just below the threshold. Someone who has been extremely annoying is Elliot Anderson, the only person on both of our lists from midfielders and defenders that's in the top 10 but hasn't yet picked up a single point from defensive contributions, averaging 11 per game, which literally means he has had 11 in game week 1, 11 in game week 2 and 11 in game week 3, which is absolutely awful and very, very annoying. But another day we could have been looking at 1 extra recovery, 1 extra tackle, and he's looking like the DEFCON monster because he's right up there with DEFCONs in all 3 matches. So, you know, Forest don't have bad fixtures over the next couple of games. I wouldn't be, you know, rage selling him. He's just been extremely close to to achieving the points, and I definitely expect him to get the points over the next few, especially with Arsenal away in game week 4. We could be looking at some points for Elliot Anderson. Outside of that, I don't really think there's a lot of great options. Maybe someone like Lucas Paqueta, who I've seen a little bit of talk about as the mini Bruno Fernandes. Obviously taking penalties for West Ham, has a little bit less defensive contributions than him, and isn't going to get as many attacking returns, I would imagine, because obviously he doesn't play for as good a team in West Ham, who have been a little bit poor so far. But if you are looking for someone like Bruno Fernandes, who takes penalties, who gets DEFCONs, who gets the odd attacking return, Lucas Paqueta could be a pretty nice option. It's just a shame that he does play for West Ham and probably isn't going to get a ton of points. So this is how my midfield is going to look, or at least it currently does look, in my wildcard draft, and that is Mohamed Salah in at midfield. I don't really feel as though I can have a wildcard without Salah playing against Burnley. It just feels like FPL suicide if I don't have him, in which case, basically the entire game is going to be captaining him as well. So he's going to be in, he's going to be captained, and could potentially come out in 4 or 5 game weeks time. We'll see how his form continues. Semenyo in there as well, did mention him being a lock on the wild card. He of course does make it in there. He's now jumped 0.4 million. I think he's the highest riser so far. He's jumped an absolute ton, up to 7.4. I've got Kudus. I've mainly just wanted a Spurs midfielder. We looked obviously at the fixtures, and Spurs had a really nice run of fixtures over the next few. I'm really between Kudus and Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson looks like a really good option, but I don't know if he's going to be able to keep his spot with Xavi Simons coming into the team. Kudus obviously plays more wider, where Xavi Simons will probably operate centrally, and he does have more minutes as well over Brennan Johnson so far in the opening 3, so I think he is just a little bit of a better option, but I do want some sort of Spurs cover, and he's obviously a really good pick at 6.6, and he has looked pretty decent in the opening 3 games. On the bench, I've got Elliot Anderson. I'm going to hold on to him. I think he still looks like a fantastic value, 5.5 mil mid. Attacking wise, he still looks really good. I think he's had the most final third passes in the league as well in the opening 3 fixtures, so someone who's still going to be getting assists and attacking returns, and hopefully he can just get that extra recovery and pick up the extra 2 points going forward. However, I think in this team he is probably going to be on the bench quite a lot, because you'll notice Enzo on the bench as well. I have picked him up. I did have 6.7 million in the bank. Basically, Enzo was the last player to go in. I did struggle to pick midfielders, to be honest. That is something that could potentially change about, because I don't know how I feel about having Enzo and Anderson on the bench at the same time for most weeks. They will basically just rotate with some of my defenders who I also want to play in most weeks anyway. So potentially I could free up some budget and just keep some money in the bank. But those are the guys I went for so far. And Enzo Fernandez will be my Chelsea cover, who has looked fantastic in the absence of Palmer, and even outside of the penalties, looks really nice attackingly. Now, before we look into the forwards, so the first thing I want to look at is the worst defences in the league, because at least with midfielders you can mix between DEFCONs, goals and assists, but when you pick forwards you want to just pick players who are going to score goals. Now, we're looking at the worst defences from game week 1 to 3, and the first thing that jumps out to me is the fact that Burnley and Everton are the worst 2 defences in the opening 3 games in terms of expected goals conceded. And who has those 2 in the opening game, in the next 2 games? That is Liverpool. Liverpool play Burnley in game week 4, and then they play Everton at home in game week 5. So Liverpool players, Liverpool attackers more specifically, are players that I'm really going to be interested in. The issue being with those guys, obviously the new signing of Alexander Isak does put a little bit of jeopardy into who the best FPL picks are going to be. Is he going to take Ekitiki's spot? Is Ekitiki then going to move out left to Gakpo's spot? How's the minutes going to work with that? Well, I think that is something that isn't going to have to be a problem for a couple of weeks. Isak obviously isn't going to be up to proper form, his proper fitness either. So I think game week 4 against Burnley is going to be safe. I think game week 5 against Everton is where we potentially could see a cameo from him. And personally, I don't want to let that affect my decisions. I think game week 7 is when I would potentially bring in Arsenal players. Someone like Gyökeres could come in game week 7, and then I could take one of my Liverpool forwards out for someone there. So I think for game week 4 and 5, we're going to be safe with Gakpo, we're going to be safe with Ekitike, safe with Wirtz anyway, and I think it's too good an opportunity to miss out. You look at the shots that both teams have faced as well, Burnley and Everton, with the 2 highest shots conceded as well, with 51 and 46 in only 3 games. I think Liverpool are going to be taking a ton of shots, and players like Gakpo, Wirtz, Ekitike, and of course Salah are going to do very well over the next 2 games. Now what I've done is compiled a list of 7 forwards that I'm interested in from game week 4 to 9 to kind of have a look at their fixtures. Now a lot of these players have decent fixtures in game week 6, so this is why if you're not free hitting, you probably have different players to which I could potentially be picking here. So the likes of Mateta works absolutely perfect for a game week 6 free hit team, because you're going to have him for Sunderland, West Ham, and avoid that game against Liverpool, and then he plays against the second worst defence in the opening 3 game weeks in Everton. So really nice games for Mateta. He is 100% going to be my third Crystal Palace player, and yes, the likes of Yeremy Pino and Ismail Assar, obviously the absence of Eze now as well, could potentially hinder him, but the fact that Mateta now has penalties, I definitely want to, I don't want to miss out on that opportunity to get him in the squad, and Mateta is definitely the first striker that I'm going to be considering. Looking a little bit further down than that, we've got Chris Wood, who has a nice fixture with Burnley and Sunderland. Again, as someone who will be free hitting in game week 6, the only fixture that I'm really missing out on there is Burnley away from home. I would have to have Wood for Arsenal away and Newcastle away, and after that Chelsea at home as well. So Chris Wood isn't really under my consideration. I think a free hit squad means you can avoid the Nottingham Forest players on the wild card, because you are going to get the Sunderland at home fixture for them anyway, and you really only miss out on that Burnley fixture, which I don't think is the end of the world. We've also got Ekitike in there, of course, who we just had a little conversation about. Burnley away, Everton at home in game week 4 and 5. Obviously free hitting in game week 6 for Crystal Palace away, and then I'm getting him back for Chelsea away, which I think is going to be a pretty difficult fixture. But I think for me, Ekitike is going to be someone I want for game week 4 and 5. Game week 7, I think that's the transfer to Gyökeres right there. They're similar prices. I think it's 8.7 for Ekitike and 9 for Gyökeres. And I think Ekitike to Gyökeres in game week 7 could be a fantastic fixture, because I think that's when Isak really starts to come into the team. Ekitike could move from striker to left, or potentially just be dropped to the bench. So I think for game week 4 and 5, he's going to be a safe pick to go for, and a really nice option. He's done fantastic in the opening 3. I think he'll do even better in game week 4 and 5. So right now I've got Mateta and Ekitike on lock. And then the final striker spot is where I am struggling a little bit. I think anyone from that top 4 could be a really nice option. Pedro has done fantastic in the opening 3 games, but he doesn't have the best of fixtures. We're looking at 2 away fixtures in game week 4 and 5, and then a tough home fixture against Liverpool in game week 7. Pretty decent fixture for the free hit in game week 6 though, but I think Pedro is just not really. I think considering how valuable right now that last forward spot feels with the 4 picks available, I think Pedro is just a little bit worse than the other ones. Evanilson, another one, he no longer will have penalties with Kluivert back in the squad. However, he does have really nice fixtures. You're looking at a home fixture against Brighton, a home fixture against Newcastle, and a home fixture against Fulham. Of course, can always free hit him in game week 6 if needed. Haaland as well. He is someone that I think could be really, he's been the best forward clearly in the opening few games. Obviously he will be in the free hit squad no matter what, but I just think his fixtures in game week 4 and 5 aren't the best. And I think for 14 million I could do a lot more with that money. So the player I'm going to be picking is going to be Ollie Watkins. We'll look at his stats in just a little second, but his fixtures look really good. I'm willing to give him a second shot. I feel like he's still been pretty decent stats-wise, which we are just about to look at. But I think Watkins, I feel like it will be a little bit silly just to sell off all of my Aston Villa players with the fixtures that they do have coming up. We know Watkins is a quality player who probably will have penalties for Aston Villa as well. So for me, I think I'm going to hold on to him. and that's Ekitike, Mateta and Watkins for those opening three. Before we do look at the final team though, we do have the stats available, and again you can see how much Erling Haaland has been the dominant striker in the opening three games with 14 shots, almost double second place in Richarlison, Evanilson, Pedro and Watkins, and he has 4.2 expected goal involvements, which is a massive gap between him and Danny Welbeck in second. Now you can see why I'm kinda willing to give Watkins a second chance. He's second for shots, joint second for shots, with 8 shots in the opening three, and he also has 1.3 expected goal involvements. I think one game against Burnley could see him jump right up to potentially second place in expected goal involvements there. So I'm going to give him another shot. I think he is someone who can do really well in his next few fixtures. But again, you can see the likes of João Pedro, Evanilson, they are up there as well for shots. Not so much Evanilson with expected goal involvements, but João Pedro is right up there as well. And that leaves me with this team on screen. We have a really nice wildcard team. However, I think there is a bit too much money on the bench, if I'm going to be honest. I think I could potentially downgrade Enzo Fernandez to a cheaper midfielder if I needed 1 or 2 million more in the bank. But I really like the rest of the team. I think it looks really nice. It's really well set up for a free hit in game week 6 as well. This won't be my final wildcard team. It could be, but I will have, of course, a team selection video out closer to the deadline, which will confirm the wildcard team that I do go for. But let me know down in the comments what you think of the team. Hopefully the stats and stuff that we run show did help you if you are going to be wildcarding this week as well. It is a bit of a longer video today, so I hope you have made it all the way through, and I hope you did enjoy and haven't fell asleep. If you did like it, please make sure to leave a like on the video. Make sure to comment down below what you think of the wildcard, and subscribe if you are new. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.